This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Dan O'Brien kicks off today's show with a grain market outlook. This K-State grain economist talks about the current market, wheat exports, and corn harvest expectations. Continuing the show is Antonina Broyaka, K-State Extension Associate in the Department of Agricultural Economics, with a snippet from her recent Ukraine update. She discusses next marketing year expectations and Ukraine's food security and price inflations. K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond closes out the show with his weather update. He explains what parts of Kansas have been luckier than others when it comes to receiving rain. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with a grain market update with K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Dan, what are we seeing on the futures market?
Well, the futures are reflecting harvest pressures, and we've seen closes yesterday on Thursday, the September 19th, of D's corn at 405 3/4, November beans at 1013 1/4, and again, corn is generally down about 7 cents, a little bit negative on soybeans. Wheat was down about 13-14 cents in across the various contracts. D's hard red winter wheat 564.5. We've seen a lot of volatility up and down in the last bit of time. And I think when you look at the trends in prices, we basically we're at price lows about 2.5 to 3 weeks ago. For D's corn, we were down at about 385, now jumped up to just under 420, and now about 405. So really just a little bit of harvest rumors back and forth, and weather issues coming into play, but not a lot going on. Still, as we talked about, it's harvest time for soybeans. The other big crop in harvest mode, along with sorghum, of course. We were down at lows of about 950 2-3 weeks ago, week and a half, 2-3 weeks ago, and got up to just under about 1030 or so, and closed yesterday at 1013. So we're kind of biding time, waiting for the major harvest pressure to hit. For hard red winter wheat, that's a little bit of a different critter. Of course, our harvest is long done for that, but we had seen the wheat markets had dropped down to about 525 during that same really low bearish time frame, jumped back up to as high as 6, and now closed about 564.5. We had some financial market announcements that came out with a little bit. The Fed stepping in, taking actions that would generally weaken the U.S. dollar, which you'd think would be positive for U.S. wheat exports. But the markets responded low. From what I've read of different reasons, they're following the lead apparently of what happened over in France and Europe with regard to those markets. So not a lot of changes. And of course, those futures changes affected the cash markets. We have seen a little bit of recovery in the bellwether corn market in Southwest Kansas, Garden City. 30 over. We had been down to about 10 or 15 over at the most, and for that area, that's kind of a pretty much a weak basis. But interesting, in that Garden City area, I saw both the old crop bid and the new crop bid at new crop 2025 bid, both at 30 over. 436 for the current cash bid. Again, harvest just around the corner, if not happening. Wet corn already gone on. 476 for fall 2025, but both 30 over. So you wonder, what this far out, why would that be the case? I think they're probably trying to send positive signals for the corn enterprise going forward, and elsewhere around the state. About 9 over in Hutchinson at 415, 10 over in the Colby area at 416, and elsewhere all below 3, ranging again the Topeka area, highest price 371, cash market 386 in Columbus, 396 in Salina. So for ag producers, for corn growers, they're looking at prices at or below $4 in a lot of cases, and be interesting to see if they decide to store or sell. It'll depend on their storage situation. And these are the listed elevator prices. There may be processor prices, direct ethanol plants, some to livestock feeders that are better than these listed numbers. But at least as we sit right now, you've got that, got our current $4 or below in a lot of the state, except in these out to the west and there in South Central. Grain sorghum, cash bids, all negative basis. The highest bid in the state in Hutchinson at $3.95, $3.91 in Colby, and $3.95 in Salina, and $3.86, $3.75 thereabouts other places. Soybeans all below 10. For this marketing year. It's interesting for the next marketing year. You've got a couple places with bids at $10 or higher. One down in the Columbus area in Southeast. So that's no doubt tied in with the expectations of either shipping on the river or going to plants, processing in Topeka area. Again, processor nearby. And when you look at wheat markets, then again, nothing great going on. We talked about how there's actually some positive news, a lot of positive news to wheat markets, but still pretty low prices. Highest cash price, Hutchinson area at $5.59, only 5 under, and then you've got Salina at $5.44 at 20 under, et cetera. And mentioning wheat, we've come into a situation with these low prices where we've really spurred on some wheat export movement, and that's both for hard red winter wheat, hard red spring wheat. So all for the good. We had for the week ending September the 12th, we had actually shipped out 6.4 million bushels of hard red winter, and we need a pace of about 4.9 to meet the USDA's projection. So really positive. Hard red spring wheat, 8.7 million bushels of shipments, and we need about 4.6 to meet the USDA's shipping goals, or targets in their WASDE report sheet. So that was all good. And I'd say for wheat, you still have this situation where we're at world minus China stocks to use less than 19%, 18.8, haven't been there since way back in 2015-16. And I think we've gotten to the place where if there's any more worries about what's happening in the Black Sea region, then that does eventually send that, combined with the tighter world supplies, does bring some business to the U.S. shores. We'll talk more about soybeans next week, but big news in the soybean side is just a tremendous sale of soybean oil, X times bigger than normal this week. So that's lent some support to soybeans, as well as U.S. prices being quite competitive with that out of Brazil and dryness in Brazil.
Dan, as we are getting into corn harvest, wanting to take a deeper look at it.
The next WASDE report comes out, I think it's October the 11th, I believe, 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere in there. And still the market's going back and forth, waiting for harvest reports to confirm high yields or not. And you can put together different scenarios on where prices will go. And I've tried to work with some of that some. And if we get the current USDA projection of 183.6 bushels per acre, 15.18 billion bushels, you end up with ending stocks just a little over 2.06 billion bushels. And the USDA projects for about 14% stocks to use, about 410. However, you keep taking about a bushel and a half off of that, then if you for 182 bushels per acre, and again the old record is 177.3, then you end up with about 15.1 billion bushels. Ending stocks now at 1.9 billion bushels. Prices, by the time you look at season average prices with that type of stocks to use setup, you're under 13% stocks use, you're looking at $4.50 per bushel, and that's a sizable difference. That's a big deal, quote. So there's a lot riding on where these harvest reports finally come. And by the way, when you look at futures in the last few days, they're pretty much forecasting about a $4.50 price for this market year. So the USDA is projecting 410, futures at about 450 by the time you look at the carries out into the future. If by some surprise we get out in the fields and yes, everything outside of Illinois and Indiana doesn't come out as well, you're down at 180.6 bushels per acre. Ending stocks, about 1.8 billion stocks to use, just over 12, and really a price with those relationships at just under $5. So here in the midst of really pretty low prices, you've got us from Kansas State talking about where, if we don't hit these lofty yield goals, there are repercussions. So all that much more, we'll be watching harvest results, harvest yields to see if we, instead of getting 183.6 bushels per acre, we get closer to 182 or 180 and a half. If that happens, that's tangible impacts on prices and will affect people's storage decisions also for corn. So we'll see where all that goes, I guess, in coming weeks.
Dan, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us our weather update.
Thank you very much, Shelby. I appreciate it.
That was K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. If you'd like to hear more from him, he is having a Winning the Game grain marketing webinar this Monday, September 23rd at noon with Kansas Farm Bureau's Mark Nelson. You can get registered for this Zoom by going to AgManager.info, and I will also link it in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but stick around because we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show with K-State Extension Associate in the Department of Agricultural Economics, Antonina Broyaka. Today, we hear Antonina in snippets from her Black Sea region and Ukraine update. You can listen to this full version on AgManager.info. However, now Antonina begins with what expectations are for the next marketing year.
We expect some lowering of the Russian share on the wheat market. At the same time, Ukrainian share decreased from 9% in 21-22 marketing year to 6.9%. I also would like to draw your attention to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, significantly decreased their wheat export to Russia, which would usually re-export it, and started export more to the world market, in particular to China and Europe. If in 21-22 marketing year, Kazakhstan exported only 28,000 tons of wheat to China, in 23-24 marketing year, they exported 623,000 tons of wheat to China. At the same time, Kazakhstan reduced their export to great Russian partner Iran from 760,000 tons to only 13,000 tons respectively. So my message is that Kazakhstan is moving out from the Russian influence, has great production potential, and is ready to be more active player on the global grain markets.
Next, she explains expectations for the global grain market.
In 24-25 marketing year, we expect lower corn production based on cut to the European Union, Serbia, Russia, Romania, Hungary, with the extreme heat and dryness in Southern Europe and the Southern and North Caucasus districts of Russia during the month of July, which really reduced yield prospects. This partially equalizes the world production and consumption of corn and will reflect in the corn export decline. Traditionally, we know that US, China, and Brazil are top producer of corn. We can observe actually significant gradual increase of corn production in China and Brazil. The biggest decrease in production is, of course, in Ukraine, over 35% compared to the pre-war level and over 12% compared to the previous year. Russian corn production getting even lower this year compared to the pre-war level, which will lead to the replacement of Russia by Canada in the 10th position. So despite the reduction in corn production, Ukraine is still keeping a leading export position, although its share is shrinking. In 23-24 marketing year, Ukraine exported more due to unexpectedly higher yields last year and obviously high beginning stocks that left from previous year. In 24-25 marketing year, Ukraine will definitely export less due to lower production. Moreover, Ukrainian forecast is much lower than USDA projection. So, as we can see, despite the war, Ukraine is still keeping a leading position in agricultural export. In 24-25 marketing year, Ukraine will continue to be first on sunflower oil and sunflower meal export. We will keep third place for rapeseed export, fourth for corn, fifth for barley, and sixth for wheat. The only what is going to change is sunflower seeds export. We will decline to the fifth place due to higher processing for sunflower oil, which is better for Ukraine in terms of selling higher value-added products. And in soybeans export, Ukraine will move up one position, also to fifth place. This is with the assumption that export logistics will not be interrupted, of course. So, as you understand, Ukraine is a top exporter, it's still a top exporter on many agricultural markets, and that is why keeping Ukrainian agriculture moving is extremely important for the world in terms of food security. Agricultural export is getting more and more important source of revenue for Ukrainian budget. Although agricultural export decreased in dollars amount, its decline is not as steep as in other industries. As a result, the share of agricultural export in the total export of Ukraine increased to 61% in 2023 compared to 41% in 2021. And as for now, it's already 33%. And so far, 27% of total export is grain export.
Antonina discusses food insecurity and food price inflation in Ukraine.
Ukraine faces internal food insecurity issues. One of the reasons is high food inflation. Since the beginning of the war, consumer price index in Ukraine increased by 39.5%. At the same time, by August 24, food in average became 42.4% more expensive compared to pre-war level in January 2022, making food less affordable for many Ukrainians. In particular, bread became more expensive by 43%.
She says what they're seeing for yields.
As it is expected, yields are much lower compared to the previous year, which had extremely favorable weather conditions and, of course, lower compared to the pre-war level. But for some grain crops like wheat and barley, yields are better this year compared to 2022 when the war just started, which shows that farmers improved their technology, adjusting to the current situation.
There are a few causes in Ukraine for lowered yields, and Antonina discusses them.
So why are yields getting lower in Ukraine? One of the reasons are inputs. This year, farmers again decreased application of fertilizers. In 2024, the fertilizer application rates in Ukraine in average was lower by 40% compared to 2021 and 5% less than in 2023. Taking into considerations that plants extract from soil more nutrients that farmers put back, yields will continue to decline, especially for sunflower crops. However, the reduction in application rates was not uniform across the country. While large producers maintained their rates, smaller ones made significant cuts, reducing their application rates by 10-15% compared to 2023.
She says what they're currently doing with winter crops.
Ukraine started sowing winter crops for 2025 harvest. In general, it is expected to plant 250,000 hectares more than last year. Winter wheat crops can be increased for more than 100,000 hectares compared to 2023. It is surprising that forecast for winter barley is 50% higher than was planted last year, but we are returning some territories to cultivation. And if farmers were not able to have spring crops, they are planting now winter crops. At the same time, we observe gradual reduction in winter rapeseed planting area.
Finally, she wraps up sharing long-term projections.
It is expected that next year prices for main grains crop will slightly decrease, but then will have growing trends. Prices for oilseeds are expected to continue growing. The upward trend in prices for sunflower seeds is higher than for other oilseeds because if Ukraine processes more oil, it will be much fewer sunflower seeds on the market, which will raise prices. Rapeseeds are also expected to rise in price significantly. And this will kind of explain the following our expectations in production and yield. Since the upward trend in prices and profitability for oilseeds is higher than that for grain, Ukrainian farmers will continue switching from grain crops to oilseeds. By 2033, total harvested area of grain is projected to slowly decrease after a rapid drop in 2022 and a modest recovery in 24, 25, 26 years. Total oilseeds area is expected to grow up to 11.9 million hectares. The increase will mainly be driven by the occupation of territories and a gradual shift toward oilseeds production from the cereal crops. Higher profitability of oilseeds as compared to cereals combined with growth of demand for feed from the poultry sector, which significantly contribute to this upward trend.
Once again, that was K-State Extension Associate in the Department of Agricultural Economics, Antonina Broyaka. I will put a link in today's show notes on agtoday.net if you'd like to hear the full update. We're cutting to a short break now, but stick around because we'll have more for you up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we end our Friday show, as always, with a weather update with K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, this past week, parts of Kansas saw some rain.
Yeah, and some good amounts of rain, too. When we look at, this time of year, we typically see average precipitation falling off, and we had been definitely in a drier trend over the last week and a half, 2 weeks for the majority of the state, but some pretty good thunderstorm events over multiple days, basically every day, Sunday through Wednesday. We had a line of storms that would develop in eastern Colorado and just move east across the state of Kansas. And so that brought some localized totals up over 1 to 2 inches of rain in places. Some big winners were in and around the Waukene area, and then we went south more towards Garden City. And then there was another corridor in north central Kansas where a very narrow line had 2 to 3 inches of rain in Osborne and near Belleville and Concordia as well. So some good rain events. Unfortunately, while that rain was very beneficial for those areas, it was still fairly localized in the heaviest rain amounts. When we look at just the average precipitation for the week, those areas got above normal, but everyone else kind of stayed at or near normal. And then the US 81 corridor was kind of cut off from most of the precipitation, where east of that, the storms would get to that point every morning, and then they would just stop and fizzle out. We had high pressure in place that would just, it was sinking air that just cut off the storms completely, and they would dissipate. And so east of US 81, unfortunately, they got very little precipitation, and we saw some deficits. We still averaged about an inch or a little bit over an inch in portions of southeast Kansas to up to a half to 3/4 of an inch. So we need rain to keep up, and those areas did not get it. So the haves and have-nots definitely increased this week. And when we think about the temperature-wise, we had above normal temperatures, 15, 20 degrees above normal during that period for the folks who didn't get rain. And that definitely adds to the drought concern as we look forward.
And what are we seeing as we look into this weekend and next week?
So the temperature is going to moderate a little bit with a frontal passage that's going to, it came south early Friday morning, and now it's going to move back north Friday afternoon as a warm front. And despite, we're going to have a lot more moisture with it and a lot more cloud cover. And then we're going to have a big storm system that's going to develop to our south and west. It's going to move slowly over the state. That's going to spread several rounds of precipitation across the majority of the state Saturday and Sunday. I expect multiple episodes of thunderstorms. I think pretty much everyone's going to get in on the rainfall. There's still some concern in southeast Kansas. They might still be the driest ones, but they're still looking at least 1/4 to a half inch. We get further north, up near the Nebraska border, we're talking potential for inches of rainfall where those storms persist and train over the same area. I think the heaviest rainfall in inches will be localized, but overall, pretty much everyone will see precipitation with probably 3/4 to an inch or more swath across most of west, central, and northern Kansas. As you get into Sunday night into Monday, we'll have the main cold front pushes through as that system moves off to the east. That's going to drop our temperatures pretty significantly to start the week next week. I think we're going to struggle to hit the 70-degree mark, which is about 10 degrees below normal for most of the state. And then we're going to see lows only get down to about the 50-degree mark, maybe some upper 40s again. And then the question kind of turns into middle of next week, what happens there? And right now it looks like the next storm system is going to go to our south. We might just get the northern fringe of it with maybe a 1/10 of an inch for the southern part of the state. That can shift north with time, so we'll be watching that. But that should, after that system, we should have you set up for pretty dry and warming conditions, not nearly as warm as we've been, and then and drying conditions as we finish out September.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us our weather update.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.